welcome back to Anna Rose Reads the podcast. I am your host, Anna, and I am thrilled to be bringing you guys another incredible conversation with another powerhouse in the horror genre these days. Annie Neugebauer joins me today to talk about her collection, You Have to Let Them Bleed, which is out with Bad Hand Books. And then we also talk about her really just mind-boggling novella collection that she has with Shortwave Publishing. It was a series, not a collection. The Other and the Extra, which these just novellas absolutely mess with your mind in the most intense ways possible. There's really no words for it, and trying to talk about them without spoiling it's a little bit difficult, but no, we get into it and we talk about the psychological kind of terror of these stories and what goes into them and how Annie navigates this landscape. And the third one's going to be coming out next year, which I'm super stoked for. But yeah, this sequence has been truly a delight to get to read and to kind of immerse myself in psychological warfare, psychological horror of the most intense kind, because it's all set out in the wilderness with folks camping in seclusion. So if you like your horror wild and secluded, also this is for you. Now I'm going to shut up and I'm going to let you all listen to this conversation. I will catch up with all of you after. Hello, Annie. Welcome to Anna Rose Reads the podcast. Thank you so much for making the time to come on today. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
No, I'm super, super stoked to get you on. I read The Extra last year whenever it came out with Shortwave. The Other is about to come out with Shortwave again. And I also read your collection, You Have to Let Them Bleed from Bad Hand Books. Feels like it's been a very busy time for you. How has all that been feeling?
Yeah, it has been a busy time, and thanks for reading all those. That's awesome. Um, yeah, it's felt really good. It's been a long time building towards having books out instead of just individual stories and poems and stuff. So it's been really fulfilling and really exciting, and yeah, feels good.
Yeah, I feel like it's always, with I know in in indie publishing, the speed of which, things get pushed out is a little bit faster than traditional
Yeah.
publishing, but I still know it's kind of like a weird timeline of like you're promoting one book, you're working on another, maybe doing edits on another, like kind of juggling all these projects at once. So
Yeah.
as busy as you've been with two novella releases within like a year's time and a collection, I imagine that it's been probably a little much.
Yeah, it has been a whirlwind. And both of the second novellas for the Outsider sequence
Yeah.
are new.
Yeah.
The extra already existed when we submitted it.
Okay, right on. Yeah.
But then I wrote the other and the spare for that sequence. And so in the midst of like promoting the extra, I'm writing the other, I'm drafting the spare, I'm revising the other. Yeah, it's very chaotic, but in a great way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I've tried to like I know sometimes I have a lot of energy with like trying to read and trying to review and trying to interview and trying to like post a podcast. So I kind of empathize, but I know it's also not the same whenever you're actively creating and editing your work like that. But no, I'm super, super stoked for you. I really love your work. And
Thank
if you want to go
you.
ahead and briefly introduce yourself for my listeners, if they are not as familiar with you as I am, I think that's probably a good place to start.
Sure. So I'm Annie Neugebauer, and I'm the author of a collection of stories called You Have to Let Them Bleed. That's through Bad Hand Books. And I'm also the author of The Outsider Sequence, which is three sort of standalone but shared world novellas.
Hmm.
The Extra, The Other, and The Spare. And
Yeah,
then I also have a novel coming with Union Square at
so
Hachette,
excited. I'm so
and a novella with them too that I doesn't exist yet.
excited. No, I'm super excited to read your novel. I really, really love your voice, especially, I feel like short story collections and even in shorter form, with your two novellas, you kind of get the option to jump around and hear an author's voice in so many different circumstances, right?
Mhm.
And it's really been interesting to see your voice like in all these different ways or to read your voice in all these different ways. And I do kind of want to ask how just like from a craft standpoint, maybe how your process differs maybe from long form fiction in the novel format to writing the novellas to the short stories that you have and you have to let them bleed. Like, is it pretty much a similar
Mhm.
process across the board, or do you have a different approach?
I do have different approaches. The idea getting and creating process is kind of the same for
Hmm.
me because the idea, I mean, is always what comes first. And so for me, I'm idea abundant. I always have ideas. And so it's sort of like an idea will come to me and I'll have to decide, like, does this want to be a short story? Does it want to be a poem? Does it want to be a novella? Does it want to be a novel? And and a lot of times I don't know right away and I have
Hmm.
to kind of workshop it or let it sit and simmer. And depending on, I don't know, I guess instinct, like the scope of what I imagine would best hold the idea
Yeah.
is sort of dictates what length it ends up being. So, there are some ideas that are just sort of in my aesthetic want to be more epic. And so that's,
Yeah.
dog-eared for a novel later when can get to it. And then there's other ideas that are maybe tighter or simpler and don't need like secondary plot lines and stuff that could be honed down to a novella. And then there's some ideas that are sort of wild enough that they want to be a short story because, short stories you can kind of get away with like crazier,
Yeah.
more outlandish concepts because it's so short, you don't have to flesh out like a novel's worth of world building
Yeah, you
in
could be
a short
punchy.
story.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, um, I guess the idea always comes first, and then it's sort of trying on different options until I feel like I know what it wants to be.
Yeah, I feel like it's kind of hard to gauge the distance a story will run. Like I really think of it in running terms because I am a runner, and some days I just don't have the gas in me to go like the full 5 miles that I'm like or 6 miles that I'm hoping to do. Sometimes it's just
Yeah.
we're gonna do speed workouts today, and that feels like akin to writing a short story or something like, a novella where it's a little bit punchier. You get in, you get out.
Hmm.
But on the days where I'm feeling really good and I have the gas to do so, an idea might have the distance to,
Yeah.
cover more topics and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
I mean, I always feel like I want to ask authors this question about like plotting and pantsing, because I
Hmm.
do feel like sometimes a story, it takes spending time with it. You can like plan it to death, but until you kind of like really get in the weeds with it, you don't know where that momentum will take you. And I'm kind of curious if you've had that experience where sometimes it just takes really spending a lot of time and feeling out the story, like one-on-one time with it to know its length.
Hmm. Yeah. Um, so I'm very much I'm not a plotter. I don't, depends on the project, I guess,
Yeah.
but for most of my projects, I don't plot every single scene. What I do is I write the pitch first,
Hmm.
and I find that I'm practiced enough at pitching
Yeah.
that I have the pitch like has the basic components of story in it. Like
Hmm.
that's why it's a pitch because it tells you what you're getting into. So like I use those pitch components to make sure I have all the big basic pieces. Like I have a character, I have motivation, that kind of stuff. And I use that to flesh it out for myself enough that
Yeah.
the general shape of a plot is there.
Hmm.
And then there are some books that have been complicated enough that I ended up plotting out like scene by scene, like a whole chart.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then there are other ones where I just wanted to there were certain things I knew I wanted to hit, things I wanted to happen, but otherwise I was writing my way through it.
Hmm.
And with short stories, I rarely plot them.
Yeah,
They're
that
so
makes sense.
short. I just kind of know. A lot of times I'll know the ending and
Mhm.
I'll know the concept and then I'll write to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, just feeling my way in the dark, basically.
No, that makes sense. And
Instinct.
I feel like it's so hard probably to plot out a short story, not only for the like the word count, that you have, but like it's pretty A to B to C. Like there's a very I feel like you don't go a whole lot longer than like, you don't get to D, E, and F, like it's pretty boom, boom, boom. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I'm always very interested in how things feel for an author or, an artist because everybody's feelings about what they create is very subjective and different. And it's always really interesting to hear what kind of like telltale markers about a story feel signature enough to say, this is, where the format that I want to present this story or, take
Hmm.
this idea. And in particular, it's really of interest to me with the Outsiders sequence, the three books that you have. The first
Hmm.
two, well, the extra's out now, the other's about to come out, and then you'll have one more. Do you want to just kind of briefly synopsize? I don't want to say each one, but the concept or the conceit for the overarching trilogy.
Hmm. It might be easier to do each one than to
Okay,
try to get
that's
them
easier for you.
overarching.
Yeah, if you want to go
Yeah,
ahead and do
yeah.
each one, that's perfect.
So the beauty of those three is that they all have such short like log lines, I guess, or
Yeah.
back cover pitches. So the extra is 10 people who go out on a guided backpacking trip,
Hmm.
set up camp, and that first night there's 11 people. But everybody knows everybody else, so remembers everybody else, and so they have to try to figure out who the extra is. The other is doppelganger horror. It's a couple that goes backpacking to work out some relationship stuff, and they meet another couple who are very like dressed similarly to them, same age, like have very similar look, and eventually morph into full-on doppelganger, and they're trying to figure out how well they know their partner. And then the third one I'm less practiced at talking about because we
Yeah.
haven't like but
Yeah.
it's a family reunion.
Oh, okay.
It's a family reunion camping trip.
Okay.
And it plays in the same fields as the extra and the other. They're all shared universe. So
Yeah.
yeah. But
Okay.
each novella is its own setting, its own set of characters and unrelated plot lines.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
the one through line that I'm picking up on all three though is the outdoor experience. And
Yes.
I kind of want to chat about that a little bit because I
Yeah.
mean, I'm a very amateur hiker. I mean, like it's like once every couple years that me and my mom will go do a hike. We are not expert skilled people by any means. We are out and back people.
Yeah.
But there is something really uncanny and unnerving about nature. And I don't know if it's just because I read like the creepypasta Staircase in the Woods at an impressionable age that like my imagination runs wild with these things.
Yeah.
But that is like the common denominator really through all three of
Yeah.
these, And so I want to hear from you what that aspect of it means to you through, this trilogy.
Yeah, so ironically, I love the outdoors. I'm an outdoorsy person. I love camping, I love hiking. So part of it is just the practical component of like I know the woods, I know the
Yeah.
wilderness really well. So
Mhm.
it's easier for me to render that setting realistic and vivid than if I chose, something less familiar.
Yeah.
But I do think there's some components to like, well, first of all, sort of being stranded. There's not very many settings modern day where you can strand your characters,
Yeah, 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 no
where
kidding, yeah.
they don't have a cell signal and they can't just like walk somewhere and ask somebody, there's again a sort of a practical component, but also a psychological component of like the feeling of really being isolated in a way that modern life has made feel very uncomfortable.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
A lot of people are just so unnerved by not being near
Mhm.
other people. So there's that. And then yeah, there's just I'm just drawn to the wilderness. I'm drawn to it in every emotion and every facet. Like I'm also a poet. I write plenty of non-horror things. I have lots of poems about how beautiful and wonderful and wise and all this stuff the woods are. But I feel like the woods, nature in general, like it's somewhat neutral.
Mhm.
It's what you bring to it while you're there,
Yeah.
which is why everybody's experience when they go camping You have people that love it so much they do it as often as they can, and you have people that are like, never again, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, I find it I like finding settings that I can imbue with whatever the story calls for. So, creepy woods, I don't generally actually find the woods super creepy, but I love to write them creepy because it works it works great for my stories.
That makes sense. And like, I do love and respect nature so much, but it's like I've seen how kind of brutal and cruel nature can be. Like my dad and my family, they hunt and fish. I'm from South Louisiana, so like
Mhm.
I've seen, the landscape of that. And we also have hurricanes down here. So like I have seen how brutal nature can be. And I think that the isolation and the stranded aspect that you really have limited in 2026 really lends itself to immediately putting yourself in kind of a tense situation right off the bat.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that I always have a good time whenever I'm hiking and I'm out there. But then like also like right when we get in the car and we're headed home, I'm like, oh, that could have gone really bad. That could have
Yeah.
like one wrong thing,
Yeah.
it could go south really, really quick. But yeah, no,
Yeah.
I love the idea of creepy woods, creepy wilderness, but also having that beautiful respect like you do with your poetry. But I also want to ask, so did the ideas for the extra and then I know the other and the next one are kind of subsequent, but did those ideas come to you while you were outdoors and hiking and like what was the nexus of those ideas?
Um, Not it. Well, okay. So the idea of the actual extra, like the extra person, that part just came to me randomly. I wasn't outdoors or anything, and it wasn't originally attached to an outdoor setting. I had tried it into different settings. It was just kind of waiting in my idea bank until I found what it wanted to connect with. Um, and I found that when we were hosting a backyard campfire party, like hang out with some friends. We were doing like Are You Afraid of the Dark style scary stories. Like it was really, really fun actually. We had like sawdust like they do in the show where you toss it on the fire and it makes like the embers like spark
That's
up and
so
stuff.
cool. I'm obsessed
Yeah,
with
it
that
was a
idea.
really fun. Yeah. So like me and my friends, we were all telling these stories and my husband Kyle told this story about allegedly, I found out later he made it up. But at the time, I actually believed him when he was telling the story because he's not like a big storyteller. And so I was like, how have I never heard you tell this before? Like, this is crazy.
That's how I feel if my husband were to say something like that because he's not somebody who leans into this kind of thing. Like
Yeah.
he's not like a huge horror person. So like if I heard that, I would very much believe him. I get that.
Yeah. So, yeah. So his job is the job of the protagonist. His previous job was very much so what inspired Matt in the extra. He worked at a university. He ran the outdoor program, and he would take students and staff from the university out on backpacking trips and climbing trips and all kinds of canoeing and whatever. So that eventually became the like very easy to research basis for the plot of a trip just like that, so that I could ask Kyle, like, did you guys ever see this? And what is this? What if this happens? What would you do? That kind of thing. But the campfire setting, I guess, did kind of make its way into the novella. They do tell campfire stories in the extra and in the other. But his portion of the story was just the very beginning of the book with the river crossing and the light, the headlamps that get really bright and then die. That was the part that Kyle told around the campfire. And somehow that got connected in my mind with the idea that had been waiting about the extra person, and I was off.
That is
So,
like such a
yeah.
creepy visual to think about, and especially a lot of it has to do with the way that you wrote it. Like there is a craft to setting up why that feels so eerie.
Yeah.
And, it's a very, I guess sensory is maybe the best way to describe it. Is like you're very immersed and it's something that you can visualize very, very easily. And, I'm kind of curious, like I know that you said that your husband told that story, but in the process of kind of reiterating it and putting it to paper, what like I just want to I guess hear about that experience of trying to make it feel so like you were there, because I think that you talk
Mhm.
about the way that the water's running, the way that it feels, like the temperature of it, the visual of the lights and like all these other things, and that's very, very tactile to the reader. And I'm curious how that
Yeah.
feels for the writer to try and implement so much of that, you know?
Yeah. That's a good question. I think that's just sort of part of my writing style. I very much like to be, not always, but often, I like to be all the way immersed in the main character's point of view to the point that I feel like I can truly imagine what they're feeling, sensing, thinking. And so part of it is trying to capture that for me. If I can feel like I'm in their body, like avataring their experience, then I have a better chance of bringing the reader into that experience too. So yeah, I think the sensory component is part of grounding, part of making, helping the reader believe that they're there, helping the reader like feel immersed, you know? Um, and it also just helps create a really cool atmosphere because you get to pick and choose, this particular character, which things is he noticing or which
Yeah.
things is she noticing, as opposed to what somebody else might notice or concentrate on. It's a way to also build the actual like mindset of the character.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense. And I feel like in particular with the other, that's really, really important. Because we get each, it's a couple that we're following, we get each of their perspectives. And because they're like the conflict is so central to them whenever we meet
Mhm.
them, and then like in turn, the people who look like them, it feels really, really important to kind of get both sides of the story from them. Like it goes a really long way
Yeah.
and kind of, it's that dramatic irony of the reader knowing everything that's going on, but each individual not knowing,
Right.
what's going on. So that's it.
Yeah.
It goes a long way in stressing the reader out in a good way, because obviously these are tight, suspenseful stories, that lean into the psychological thrill of not knowing who this person is, even whenever it could be a stranger, or like in the case of the extra, it technically is a stranger, but they all feel familiar. And,
Right.
that same kind of logic can be applied to the other because it's somebody that you feel like but what if you don't? Like that question of doubt kind of enters the conversation. I do want to ask where the notion or the idea to run with doppelganger horror came from, because I never realized how terrifying that was to me until I have my good friend Stephanie, who does the Books in the Freezer podcast. She did an episode on doppelganger horror, and hearing her and her guests talk through that one wigged me. I was like, okay, this is definitely a hot button issue for me. I didn't realize. And then, of course,
Oh,
reading your
cool.
novella, I was just going through it the whole time. So it,
Sorry.
no, 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 you did your job very well.
Thank you. Um, yeah, this is maybe a frustrating response, but it felt very, I don't want to almost say obvious to me.
No,
Like,
no, that's so valid. It's one of those things that I feel like until you sit with it and think about it really long, it's like, oh yeah, that's a thing. But when you do
yeah.
think about it, it's hard to unsee it ever again, you know?
Yeah, yeah. So when I wrote the extra, I didn't plan on the other and the spare. Those came after. And so at one point, I was basically asking myself, if I were going to write a follow-up to the extra, what would I want to do? And for whatever reason, it seemed super obvious to me that the second one would be a couple instead of a big group. I was like, well, a couple, okay. And then the doppelganger part felt obvious with the couple in a way that doesn't necessarily make sense, but just is, the creative process is sometimes pretty mysterious, even when you're the one in it. Um, yeah, and then it built out from there. I knew I wanted it to be I wanted it to hold well with the extra, so I knew I wanted an outdoor setting. I wanted similar vibes and then it just kind of yeah, all came together after that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I have to laugh because I understand sometimes things just come to you and just make sense to you. And it's like,
Yeah.
I feel like sometimes those reasons reveal themselves later on down the line whenever you think about like what you were watching or doing whenever the idea came to you. But it
Yeah.
also just feels sometimes so random
Yeah,
why like you
totally.
pair things together. But no, so I
Yeah.
have a great appreciation for that sentiment. But yeah, no, there's something so, and I don't know. I mean, I just got married like in October. I mean, we've been together for like years at this point. We've lived together for years. But
Yeah.
you write, before we even get to the doppelganger situation in the other, there is somewhat of a conflict, an unspoken conflict that's going on between your two main characters, and it's about whether or not they're going to have children
Right.
and kind of who they are and who they think they are, and they've been together a really long time. And I feel like that kind of conflict is very prescient, especially in the year of 2026, because there's a lot going on in the world, and the decision to bring a child into it is a really
Yeah.
intriguing topic to think
Yeah.
on. And especially, for your two characters, the way that you set everything up, we're thinking about that, really, really with them. We're with them every step of the way. And I kind of wanted to ask you why you chose that conflict for them
Mhm.
to kind of, be going through or both contemplating on this journey at the outset of the story.
Yeah, so that was also a lot of my creative process is find a point and work backwards. And I guess it was sort of that, I knew I wanted a couple and I knew I wanted this doppelganger concept where they're trying to figure out which one's the real, their real spouse. And so that inherently asks for the couple to be one that has been together for a long time, so that they know each other extremely well, so that there was plenty of depth to mine as far as like, when you know somebody almost as well as yourself, if you're a couple that has grown up together in that way, then I feel like it's even more uncanny and unsettling when somebody can mimic that. So yeah, that was the as far as like a couple that had been together for a very long time. And so then I needed them to probably be married, since they had been together for so long, but I needed them to have a conflict that felt, relatable, understandable to a lot of people. And the like work backwards age was right in there, right around 30 when everybody is starting to try to make this decision. It's a very real, like you said, like this is really what a lot of my friends and a lot of my peers are dealing with is like at, in the modern world, at what age do you decide to have kids or to decide to not have kids? And yeah, it's real. It's a hard question. I don't actually know very many people that have been able to easily and immediately answer and never doubt their choice.
Yeah.
So yeah, it just felt like a sort of not universal, but a very sympathetic, a very
Yeah.
easy to empathize with, conflict that also I wanted my characters to be able to truly care about each other.
Hmm.
I didn't, I knew I wanted them to be working towards, an ending that the reader could root for.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I didn't want it to be a conflict that would make them like, oh, they should split. Like they should
Yeah.
get, that kind of thing. So it had the right vibe to do all the things that I was trying to do plot and theme wise.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
I think for me, in horror, and like I think that this is partially kind of due to the domestic thriller boom that we had
Mhm.
like in the early 2000 like 2010s, um Gone I love Gone Girl to death, but then like every iteration of that afterward was about the inherent mistrust between partners. And
Yeah.
that was a there was I mean, and rightfully so, there's a lot of fertile ground for horror there because if you can't trust the one person that you should be able to trust undoubtedly, like that is very startling. But I think, a lot of or I shouldn't say a lot, but what I'm starting to see in horror that I'm really, really enjoying and appreciating is not pitting two characters against each other in a partnership like this.
Yeah.
Even it can be friendships, it can be romantic relationships, it can be just, partnerships. It's not, nobody has like really any ill intent. Everybody's doing the
Hmm.
best that they can with what they have. And sometimes the horror still persists and, affects them. And I think that that is definitely the case with the other. They're both right in what they want and their love for one another. It's not like
Hmm.
anybody's out to harm anybody.
Right.
And they, I think that having that nuance in the conversation of interpersonal relationship horror is really, really important because that to me that feels more accurate than constant backstabbing and
Yeah,
secret life plots and all these things. I mean, that certainly that does happen. Unfortunately, that is a thing. But
right,
to the lay person or, the common person, I feel like, and hopefully that is more of our experience in that, there's no
right.
secret families, there's no, all these other
Yeah,
things.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I wholeheartedly agree with everything you said. Yeah,
Yeah. And like, was that a conscious decision that you think that you kind of wanted whenever you created this dynamic between them? And you kind of do it as well with the extra because it's again, there's really no malintent with anybody in the group.
right.
Everybody's just existing, but it's
Yeah.
very disturbing and unnerving circumstances. So it's more of this external, unknowable threat that we
Hmm.
can't really define versus our main characters, which is really, really interesting rather than people being pitted against each other, you know?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it's hard for me not to generalize what I like and don't like because I do so many different things. I don't want to say something and then later be like, "Oh, that's not true."
No, I totally understand.
But I like horror that doesn't have easy answers. I like horror that you can't like I like to write the horror that doesn't pat you on the back when it's done. I like it when it sticks in your head. I like it when you can't shake it. I like it when it's frustrating because you might do the same things they're doing. Like maybe you would do a lot of the same, make a lot of the same choices that this protagonist or this couple is making, and you're still kind of host. Like I like that. It feels more real to me. Um, and I also, just for the record, enjoy horror that gives a really clean world building and a really clean plot solution and sort of an answer and a bow. And like, I also like that. And I think that that sort of catharsis can be really valuable. But I guess my favorite place to create in and also to consume in is the place where it's more real life than that. Like, when in real life do we get the bow? Like I
No.
don't ever get the bow on top, like hardly ever.
Yeah, no, for sure. And yeah, and like I agree with you in that sometimes I do want a cleaner, neater ending because that is
Yeah,
satisfying to get that because we don't get it in the real
absolutely.
world.
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
like the art or like the meaningful stuff, and not to say that the other stuff's not meaningful, but the stuff that I do come back to and think about often is the stuff that I don't get answers to, and that my mind is filling in the blanks of, well, what did this mean? What does that mean? What is like a month for this couple look like from now? Like what is,
Yeah.
you kind of keep thinking about what is not said is just as important as what is said. It's
Hmm.
kind of that absence that still has a presence, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And I don't want to spoil the other, but I am a little curious how you landed on the ending. If we can talk about it without spoiling, if not, I'll cut this part. But just,
Yeah.
you know,
I don't know if we
how,
can or not.
yeah.
Um, yeah, it definitely was related to when I realized what I wanted the couple to be struggling with.
Hmm.
That also spoke to my ending, and my ending was also inspired by connection to the first novella,
Yeah.
the extra. I am definitely, with these three novellas, I am definitely playing in a strange wheelhouse that I don't think very many authors get to do, which
Hmm.
is they're definitely connected,
Yeah.
but they're not sequels, Like
Yeah.
I feel
It's
like
like you have spin-offs basically.
yeah, it's like I'm
Yeah.
doing my own like episodic, like it's like Cabinet of Curiosities or Black Mirror,
Yeah, yeah,
a
yeah.
show where each episode can stand alone, but I also get to tie them together more than that because it's all me. I don't have
Hmm.
to share it with different artists creating their own worlds. Like, so it's a very weird hinterland where, like the answer to that is that the ending of the other came in large part from the themes and then my desire to continue to play in the world of the extra.
Yeah.
And I have created a world in quite a bit more like expansion and detail than is on the page in those books.
Hmm.
Because I want to be true to my own set of rules, even
Yeah.
if the reader doesn't necessarily get to know what those rules are.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's all a big weird sandbox.
It is, but like it kind of like my best frame of reference for something like this is, I'm a big X-Files fan, and they would classify those
Mm,
episodes as like Monster of the Week versus, the mythology episodes. But in this instance,
yeah.
you're kind of getting to do both at the same
Yeah,
time
that's such a good analogy.
because
I
you
can't
have
believe
the
I didn't think of X-Files.
Well, I mean,
Yes.
you get your own, your own mythology and your own lore, and you kind of
Yeah,
get to share as much of that as you want and kind of keep as much of it secret as you'd like.
right.
But then, there is each edition is its own monster of the week-ish kind of entry, but it connects all in one centralized way. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah,
really
that's a
fun to
good way
kind
to
of
look
see
at
the
it.
marriage of the two because it's not an easy needle to thread in doing that, right? Like
Yeah.
yeah, I would imagine
Yeah.
it's not easy. So it's really
Yeah.
cool to kind of see that concept play out. And I know it's going to be a while until the third addition to this trilogy is going to be released, but are you done working on it at this point? Like is it in the edit? Like at what stage
Yes.
is it in? So like everything's settled on it.
It's
It's
it's all the way
okay.
finished and edited and waiting for like processing with cover and formatting and
Yeah,
that stage of things.
gotcha.
And it's really not that far away. It's in spring this coming year, so it's
Yeah.
less than a year away now, which is kind of wild, but
To me, it feels far away because I want to read it now. But
uh,
in the
thank you.
grand scheme of things, not so much. But
Yeah.
no, I'm really excited to read that one as well. And like it's one of those things that I would really probably want to read them all back to back to back. To kind of get
Hmm.
that experience once they're all published together.
Yeah.
At
Yeah.
the accessible. So no, we might have to
Yeah.
do a big recap episode
Oh, that'd
as
be
soon as
fun.
it's all over. But
Yeah.
no,
Yeah,
super super.
they are written like I did write them for them to be read like most effectively in order.
Yeah.
That's why we went with sequence instead of
Yeah.
like series or a different word because I was like because they're not sequels. So you can't say book, you can't quite say book one, two, and three and people think like, it's like a series where there's one character who comes back
Right.
for the next plot. It's
Mhm.
not anything like that, but they do work best if you read them in order.
Yeah.
That's what I intended at least. Yeah. But
Yeah.
I've also had people skip to book two and they seemed fine. So, what do I know?
No, no, I totally understand kind of keeping it, and I feel like again with you the way that we just talked about kind of knowing the central mythology of this world that you've created, there are certain things that you're going to dispense and kind of tip your hat to at certain points,
Yeah.
knowing that book one was out here, book two was out here, book three was out here. So
Yeah.
makes sense to me from a logistical standpoint. But I do want to pivot and I do want to talk about your collection. You have to let them bleed
Yeah.
because I read that and there were so many stories in there that I was just kind of left staring at the wall after or being like, oh my God, I feel so seen in this. And collections are always interesting to me because I know authors sometimes have a repository of short stories that have already been published elsewhere, like as, just submitted places
Yeah.
in other anthologies or magazines and stuff like that, or sometimes once the idea for the collection comes about, they'll write to that collection specifically to fit it thematically. So logistically I just have a like, I want to hear about how this collection came to be and all those sorts of things, especially
Sure.
because you have a theme in all of this, and it's the color, the poeticism of
Hmm.
colors. So I would love to hear about all that.
Yeah. So this one is, I think it ended up being 19 stories, and 18 of them had been published over very many years of publishing stories one at a time in various, anthologies and magazines and everything, podcasts, websites, everything. Um, so it was it was born of me realizing sort of all of a sudden that I could publish a book of stories. Like
Oh, I
I've
love that.
I've been working in this industry for like almost 2 decades. I think it's 18 or 19 years or something like that. And so I've had a very steadfast goal of having my novels published with one of the big five publishers, which I finally feel like I can talk about now because I actually got one picked up. So,
Well, yeah.
um, but it's been not an easy journey. It's been really complicated. I've had so many like close calls and rave rejections, and it's been a very long haul. And so in the meantime, I didn't want to be publishing nothing. So I was putting out all of the stories and poems that I could create in between novels and get, accepted somewhere that I thought was a good venue. Um, and after 18 years of doing that, I had a lot of stories. And at one point I was like, oh, like I could publish books that aren't novels with other presses and still like keep my novels for hopefully a big five debut. Um, and that was when I realized like I have actually two short stories worth of two collections worth of short stories. And so I was like, okay, let's see if I can get one of those picked up. And so I was going through all of the stories that I'd had published and sort of looking for which ones fit together, which ones were my favorite, which ones sort of were of, I don't know, I want to say canon, but it's not a canon if it's just your stuff, is it? I don't know what the word is. My body of work.
Yeah, if it's
Um,
if you feel like it's core to your central like voice and like what you're
yes.
wanting to say about yourself, then I would definitely call it canon.
Okay, okay. So it's Annie Cannon,
Yeah,
like it's
I love
it's what
that.
I'm trying to do basically. So like and I like I said I play in a lot of different subgenres and styles and stuff, but there was sort of this core collection that I was able to say like these all kind of work. Um and then I needed a way to pull them together in some sort of framework. And the color organization of that collection, for anybody who hasn't read it, it's I call the narrator the Shadowling Collector, and they're like sort of collecting little monstrous shadowlings that are the stories themselves and organizing them by color in like a kind of like a curio display, like a sectioned off thing by color. Um, and that came from the 8 poems that are that framework for the Shadowling Collector. I had written years and years and years ago. I just got the idea of a Shadowling Collector sorting things by color, and I thought at the time that maybe I would use them to frame out a poetry collection, like a horror poetry. Um, but I still have never written quite enough horror poetry to build out an entire collection. But so when I was trying to organize my stories, I thought back to that and I was like, oh, I wonder if I could use those poems to frame the stories instead. And when I tried it, I thought it worked really well. I thought it was really neat. So then it was a matter of sorting the stories into color, which was very fun for me, a very fun
I was
exercise.
very curious how you did that,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
what spoke to you the most about a story that said this
hmm
is red, this is blue, this is green, this is.
Yeah, yeah. Well, full disclosure, some of them it was more practical than that, right? Like the opening story, like I thought like, I didn't force any of them into a color section that felt wrong. But there were some where I was like, this could have gone in a couple different ones. And for practical reasons, like the opening story, I wanted it to be Hyde because that story is super, super short. It's like a sampler and it's very on vibe for my general style. So I was like, this just should be the first story, right? It's less about that Hyde is purple and more about that it works as an opener. Um, and then same thing for the last story, So Sings the Siren. Like I just wanted that to be my closer because I think it's one of my strongest pieces. And it also just is very like core Annie Neugebauer themes and style and stuff. So there were some practical things too, but otherwise it was a matter of like certain stories. Like there's a Halloween story that's like a period piece. So of course that's going to be an orange because it's a Halloween story, So that one got an orange. And like the pelt, I don't know why, but that story is yellow.
Okay, but that makes so much sense to me though, because whenever I think of a pelt, I think
Yeah.
of tanning, like and
Yes.
that is
Maybe
like
that is why.
it's
I
like
also picture the grass in that story.
yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
in Central Texas and the grass, it's summer, so the grass is gonna be like a yellowy faded. The grass is not green in Texas in the summer. Unless you have a sprinkler system, the grass is not green. So so yeah, the pelt, the tanning, the hide, the fur, the grass, it just that story's yellow, you know? So there are certain stories like that where I was like, well, that one has to be this color. It can't
Yeah.
be a different color. And then there were other stories where I was like, okay, this could maybe be blue, but I need another story in green or whatever. And
Yeah.
some of them kind of got shuffled and tried in different places until I was happy with all of them overall.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
I do want to ask, are you a visual artist as well? Like, do you draw or paint or do any kind of like
I not with any true skill. But yeah,
Yeah.
I love all art that I have any access to. I
Yeah.
love interior design, which is very
Yeah.
color heavy.
Yes. Okay.
I love drawing and coloring and painting. I've never learned how to like do it well enough that I would feel like proud to show my work, but I'm drawn to it, you know.
Yeah. Well, it's
Um,
it's super interesting for me because I draw and I paint, but like I love to work in either graphite, like which is just black and white. Like I do
yeah,
not, or whenever I paint, I will paint in black and white. Or like with something with like a pop of color. I
yeah,
really don't like using color because they all have to work together in a
right.
composition piece. And like
Yeah,
there's a lot of layering and blending. And I thought about the whole creative process of using color in art when I was reading your collection because
yeah,
it's the cohesive narrative, but it is sectioned off by this collector. So to me, it was such a brilliant execution of that idea of like, man, as somebody who doesn't like to work in color, this is a brilliant way to like get around it and to like blend all of the
yeah.
themes of these things,
That's
just
so
just from
interesting
a
that
visual
you
medium.
do know that you don't like to do color because I'm obsessed with color. I
Yeah.
love color. Like I've said before, like it makes me sound like a weirdo, but I feel about color the way a lot of people talk about feeling about music.
Yeah, yeah,
Like I love music too. It's not like I
yeah.
don't,
No, no, no.
but like the way that it sort of like a lot of people will say like I couldn't live without music or I music speaks to me on a level that words can't reach and different things like that. That's how I feel about color.
Yeah.
So it feels intuitive to me in a way that I don't always know how to articulate, but it's still
Yeah.
there.
I think for me, the reason that I tend to avoid color whenever, at least I'm creating it, like I love Lisa Frank. Like I have a Lisa Frank stickers right here, and that's a very colorful. Like, so I'm
Yeah.
not saying like I hate color like and everything else, but at least for me, I just get very overwhelmed by
Mm,
all of the possibilities and combinations and how this will highlight this and this will accentuate this and like, color theory and comparing and contrasting colors, all of that. I just get very easily overwhelmed with like, oh my God, this could go so many different directions, and I already have a hard enough time as it is, like leaving something alone and not
yeah.
working on it to death. And it's always worse when there's color involved. It's like, well, maybe if I layer this with this, or maybe if I touch up this with this, at least with black and white, there's only so much it's very binary in that sense of like,
Right.
there's
Yeah.
only so many shades of gray that you can get to.
At least
Um,
50.
yeah, that is a great joke. I love that. No, but it was really interesting for me to think about it when I was reading your
Yeah.
collection. So I wanted to hear about your relationship with visual art too, because it is a very visual experience to think about it in that way.
Yeah.
There are three stories that whenever I try and talk to authors about collections or, if I'm talking to somebody about an anthology, I try to pick out three heavy hitters for me whenever I was reading it. And the three
Sure.
for me were The Baby, The Pelt, and Glove Box. Mostly
Cool.
because there were aspects of those stories that I had never really considered before. But like for instance, the baby, the opening of that story is magnificent.
Thank
It is
you.
such a punch, and I don't think it's a spoiler to say, but it's literally like the
No,
opening
yeah.
is like a woman hears a baby crying and she wakes up groggily and she's like, I gotta go take care of the baby. And then like she's like, I don't have a baby. I don't
Yeah.
like the truth of the matter
Yeah.
is revealed, and you're like, oh well, I've got so many questions, and
Yeah.
obviously so does
Absolutely.
she.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to talk about the punchiness of that story and writing it. The aspect that shines for me in that story is the killer opening, and there's a really big set piece at the end that like I went to the OBGYN not long after reading this, and I was like, I
Oh,
was
I'm
like, "Whew,
sorry.
it's okay. But I just want to talk
I
about,
did you dirty with that one.
yeah, it's okay. I mean, look, the OBGYNs are a traumatic enough experience as it is. It's
Right?
fine.
Yeah. That's not a, that's, yeah. Um, yeah. Yeah. That story is definitely one of the wild ones. It was not, so that story was the one that's original to the collection. That's the only story
Oh,
that hadn't
really?
first appeared somewhere else. Yeah.
Okay, right on.
And it has now. It was published in Remains, the
Okay,
like UK. It used to be like Black Static, but now it's called Remains,
gotcha,
or
gotcha.
it's like a the same folks. But yeah, it was the only one that hadn't been published, and it was one that I was not like entirely ready to publish. It's like one of those stories where I was like, do I really want to take this to my critique partners, or do I want them to think I'm more normal than this? Like
It's so fair. I totally understand that.
my critique partners are so used to it though. Like they're just like, Annie, there's nothing you can say now.
Well, it's gotta be a good feeling though. Like, hey, all doors are open. There's like really
Yeah.
no threshold that
Yeah.
you have to cross for the first time again.
It's true. It's true. But so yeah, that story was one that I um when I was pulling the collection together and talking with Doug at Bad Hand, I realized at some point in the conversation I was like, "Oh, should we put a story in here that hasn't been published yet so that there's one original story?" Um just in case, like, not that very many people have read like every single anthology I've ever had a story in, but like just in case there's somebody who's read a lot of them, so that they have at least one piece that's guaranteed fresh. And he loved that idea, and he was like, "Do you have any stories that haven't been published?" And I was like, "I have a few." And he said, "Well, why don't you just send me three? Don't overthink it. Just send me three that might work, and I'll read them, and I can help you choose." And I didn't overthink it. I sent him three stories, and one of them was the baby. And after I sent it to him, I was like, "Oh, I shouldn't have put the baby in there. Like, I shouldn't have given that." And of course, he came back later, and he was like, "I feel really strongly that the one it should be the baby." And I was like, "God." Of course.
I love that so
But
much.
he was totally right. Like it is exactly the one that needed to be in there. And I sort of tricked myself into publishing that one, which worked out great because that's one that a lot of people have really loved because it is pretty wild.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's good, lean, mean horror, and it resonates. I think it just resonates a lot for the female experience. Like,
Hmm.
I feel like it's just one of those things that it's odd. I know that you said like, didn't know if I was ready to push this out for other people to read, but like, oddly enough,
Yeah.
one of the most relatable pieces that I've read, just about all of the horrors and anxieties of like motherhood and what you want, what you don't want, and
Yeah. Yeah.
just so much of. I don't want to say too much without spoiling it. But yeah, no, it's so relatable. Even though it is really lean and mean and it goes some quote unquote wild places,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
those wild places are very emblematic of the wild feelings I think that we feel as women about
Yeah.
this experience.
Absolutely. And that is what I have discovered. I have to keep learning this lesson over and over again over the different things is that the the more the more I write something feeling like it's too much,
Hmm.
the more people love it once they get it.
Yeah.
And I don't just mean with like graphicness or shock or
Oh
anything,
yeah,
but
yeah,
like
yeah.
too personal or too intimate or too exposing or too weird or too anything. And
Hmm.
I'm like, maybe I should just trunk this, Like the more I want to trunk something, the more it ends up being sort of a favorite because those things they hit a chord,
Yeah.
If there's something that if I'm kind of like vaguely uncomfortable about it, then like I've probably hit a chord that'll do the same for somebody else. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, it's always weird how your brain or you know your personality, whatever you want to call it, kind of is like in the if you think about like a fight, flight, or freeze response, it's like no, don't do that, don't do that. But then it's the thing that ends up working the best. I
Yeah.
love the psychology of that so much because it's so interesting to hear how it feels for an author
Hmm.
to lean into the uncomfortable, which really is what horror is. So it's
Absolutely.
one
Yeah,
big, for lack of better words, mind fuck all around whenever you're doing
absolutely.
this.
Yeah, and
Um,
that's what I chase when I'm writing.
yeah.
I chase the mind fuck. I chase the like, oh God, too far. Like, yep, go further. Like that's what I'm after. But then there is always sort of a real life moment where I'm like, is somebody gonna read this? Like I did the thing. Okay, good job, me, for like following what makes me feel uncomfortable or scared or whatever. But now I'm like, am I really gonna show this to people? You know? And the answer so far has been yes.
Yes. No, no, I totally understand. There's so much vulnerability in being a writer, and especially a writer in
Yeah.
horror, because it's all writer horror is all about kind of I don't want to say exploiting, but exposing, I guess, is the better word, those vulnerabilities and what makes
Yeah.
us terrified. So it's push
Yeah.
button all around. But another one of the stories that really had me feeling that way is The Pelt. The Pelt feels like it is like Shirley Jack, like it's the kind of story that I feel like I should have been reading in high school to learn about
Oh,
the
thank
rug being pulled
you.
out from underneath you, suspense, tension, like it was one of those set pieces that it just blew me away. It like truly astonished me the
Thank
whole way
you.
through. I just want to hear about it and like how the idea came to you and if there were any inspirational pieces of art that you kind of drew upon to write that story.
Let's see. So I wrote that one after reading one of Ellen Datlow's like best horror of the year
Yeah, yeah,
anthologies.
yeah.
Because I realized I don't remember which year it is. I think I looked it up at one point for for Ellen and I forgot already, but it was one of the like earlier ones, I think. And I was reading to enjoy and also to study, and I realized that a lot of the stories that spoke to me the most strongly from that year's had like really, really distinct settings
Yeah.
in a way that I felt myself trying to avoid doing
Mhm.
sometimes in my work. And so then that made me look at like, well, why am I doing that? And I realized that I thought that the settings that I knew best were boring. And I realized that I thought they were boring because they're what I know best and I'm super used
Yeah.
to them. So like, if you compare some story that's set in like, a different country or a culture that I'm less familiar with or whatever, they feel so interesting. And I realized like, oh, but that's how my settings that I'm familiar with would feel if I render them for somebody who doesn't already know them.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's how that setting, the sort of nice house on some not quite farmland, but like land in the country, was inspired by childhood family friends who
Hmm.
had a very similar like property
Yeah, yeah.
situation. And I was like, I know that land, that feeling so well that I felt like I could capture it. And then the pelt idea was one that just came to me. Like the idea of a pelt draped over a fence that you couldn't tell what animal it belonged to. That's one of those things that just popped into my head, unexplainable. And then the third component for me is usually that I want to say something with a
Yeah.
story. Not always, but usually I have something I want to say. And that story, like I remember like laughing at myself afterwards because I was like, what I want to say is how impossible it is to ever truly communicate and be understood. And I was like, and I want to write that in a story, which is literally the opposite of what I'm
Yeah.
like you just said. I can't do that,
Yeah.
like
You want to communicate what you can't communicate.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But that tension I think really worked in my favor in that story because I was up against it the whole time. And that's a literary story.
Yeah.
I know literary fiction versus commercial has a lot of like contention and people have a lot of opinions and stuff, but um, that's a story that I wrote, at least in my perspective, in a literary way. Um, and I did not, I found out what happened as I wrote it. I didn't
Yeah.
plot that one.
Yeah.
So the ending, I allowed the ending to surprise me too. I found it as I was going, and I just knew that was right. And so, yeah, those pieces all just kind of came together, and that is one of my favorites. I'm really proud of that one.
I really love it. And there's something very distinct about that story, and that it does feel literary, and it does feel like it feels like less is more with that story. Like
Hmm.
you leave enough off the page to wonder. You know, you do, and oddly, thematically to me, it resonates the same way as the trilogy, the Outsider sequence,
I
because
can
it's
totally see that.
because like, you
Yeah.
know, the whole role of how well can you know somebody in this really strange, bizarre one-off situation is
Yeah.
true to the pelt. But
Hmm.
there's a very different kind of tone or slant that I feel like that story embodies in a way that is just like it's just very graceful in the eventuality and the inevitability of where it gets, but it's still surprising enough to kind of knock the wind out of your sails a bit. And that's a very
Thank you.
fine line to walk to be like, it was always going to be this way, but also I had no idea.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that so much. Yeah, I definitely have like recurring themes. Like when you say that, I can absolutely see it. I mean, I come back to identity and that
Yeah.
sort of concept of like how well can you ever truly know another
Yeah.
person that's separate from yourself, and can you ever even really know yourself? Is the
Yeah,
real
that
scary
too.
thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
so yeah, it is a different way of coming at that same thing.
Yeah. So I think that it's probably one of my favorite short stories that I've read all year. And then the last
Thank
one
you.
that I really, really liked because it was a fear that I didn't even know that I should have is from the short story Glove Box. It's basically about kind of like you get it trickles in this external information about these attacks that happen to cashiers. And you are, you know, with this cashier as she's working, and
Yeah.
she's very, very anxious about this kind of thing happening to her. And I won't say the rest because, you know, you read to
Yeah.
find out. But what did that come to you one day when you were like when you were paying at the store? Like what?
I do not remember where I got the idea for that one. Um, it's definitely one that I had no idea. I didn't the ending, let's see. Let me try to rephrase this. I wrote that what I wrote my way all the way through that one.
Yeah.
I was not one where I was like I had the idea and I wanted to write the story. It was more like I just started writing a story and it just kind of it was all subconscious and um the ending was not what I was writing towards for that one.
That's so interesting.
Um, yeah, I didn't even know like how long it would be. That one's, I think, flash fiction
Yeah.
technically. It's really, really short.
It's punchy.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so I definitely didn't know it was going to be flash fiction. That happens to me a lot with Flash, is that I'm just like, I'm going to start a story,
Yeah, and see
and
where it
then
goes.
when I get to the ending, I'm like, oh, that was the end. Like that was shorter than I thought. Because I try to trust where what feels like the end. I try to
Yeah.
trust when to stop.
Yeah.
And that was definitely one where I was like, oh, okay, that's it. Just a little shorty. Yeah.
Yeah. It's yeah, it just the idea of like the crime have like it never occurred to me that and I don't
Yeah.
really want to say what it is, but like that kind of offense was possible. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like I had
It's
not
very
realized.
weird.
Yeah, like that specific anxiety, like you invented a new anxiety for me, which
Thank you.
for somebody who has anxiety, that's saying something because normally
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
you know, your brain is like final destination. I'm constantly looking around like that could kill me, that could kill me, that could kill me.
Right. Right.
But yeah, New
I
Fear
hear you.
Unlocked. I loved it.
Thank you.
It was
Appreciate that.
it's such a good bad time. I mean, the whole collection really
Yeah.
is, but that one in particular.
A
But
good bad time.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
I'm really I think my favorite thing about talking to you and your work is, you know, you have so much range, and I love that, you know, there are so many aspects that you lean into with all your stories, and you know, there's more of the subtler hints of things, and the lean you can also get lean and mean as you are with like the baby, the pelt, and glove box. I feel like those are some really sharp stories. But
Thank
yeah,
you.
I'm really really thrilled to see the Outsider sequence get finished up. I'm really excited
Yeah.
for your novel. I'm super super stoked. But what does the rest
Thank
of
you.
your 2026 look like? Like, are there any other projects or like book events,
Let's
anything that we
see.
can promote for you?
Um, I don't think I have anything else releasing this calendar year. Well, I have a story in oh, it's tucked up there. I have a story in Silent Nightmares,
Oh
which
yeah,
is
yeah,
the like sort of holiday winter solstice horror
yeah,
anthology. I have a story in that. Um, and the next thing coming, well, the other is coming out in a couple of weeks, so I guess I
yeah,
should plug that, huh? I feel like it's already out because it's had so many people get advanced review copies.
yeah, yeah,
It's done great. And so I'm like, okay, that's out. But it's not actually out. It comes
yeah,
out on June 9th.
yeah. No, I totally get it.
Let's just erase that part and make it sound like I know what I'm talking about.
Sure, whatever you want.
I'm just kidding. It's fine. But yeah, the other is coming out on June 9th, officially. And then the spare comes out March 9th next year.
27, yeah.
Yeah. And then after that will be the novel, which is called Once the Darkness Comes. I don't have an exact date for that yet, but it'll probably be fall, winter
Okay,
of
right on.
2027
Okay,
or 8, depending on which part of the year it's in.
yeah,
And then there will be another novella after that. So
perfect.
I've got them all stacked up.
Yeah, yeah, and you're gonna stay busy for a while, it sounds like, which is
Yes, I
awesome,
will.
and I'm super stoked to see. Is
Thank
there
you.
anything that you're working on currently that you can talk about? I know like a lot of times this is like, you're not really supposed to be talking about what you're working on, but sometimes it's
Hmm.
fun to just kind of like say what's on your mind, like what you're thinking about right now in the genre and kind of what you want to explore
Yeah.
and stuff like that.
Um, I am definitely still living in the outsider sequence world.
Yeah.
I do find myself bumbling around the edges of that a little bit.
Yeah.
I am trying to focus on Once the Darkness Comes because I assume I'm going to have some revisions ahead of me,
Yeah.
very soon. And that is a book that is older, as far as like when I wrote it. So I'm looking forward to getting back into it
Yeah.
with some distance. And I would love to write some fresh stories
Hmm.
too. It's been a while since I've written anything brand new short fiction wise because
Yeah.
I've been writing The Other in the Spare.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I realized back when I was divvying up stories for You Have to Let Them Bleed that I also have enough stories to do like a different collection that
Yeah.
was maybe more like speculative slanted horror, like a little bit more fantasy feeling, a little bit more sci-fi feeling, still very, very dark.
Mm.
Um, and I have maybe 3 or 4 stories that I would like to write for that I haven't had a chance to get to yet.
Yeah.
So I would love to be working on those at some point too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, absolutely. Yeah. I feel like it's probably always interesting to revisit your older stuff, like you said, with edits
Hmm.
and stuff, and
Hmm.
then kind of pivoting to that newer feeling. I feel like that's two very distinct frameworks of, like, or parts of your brain that
Yeah,
you're kind of engaging with to to create and craft and hone and all that good stuff. So no,
absolutely.
I'm very, very thrilled though for your very busy calendar that's coming up.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much for making the time to chat about your collection and the Outsider sequence. I am a big, big fan of your work, so this has been
Thank
such a
you.
delight. And like we said, the other will be coming out from Shortwave on June 9th. If you haven't picked up the extra yet, now's the perfect time to do it because
Sure is. Yeah.
the other will be coming out very shortly. But thank you so much, Annie. This has been such a delight.
Yeah, I had a blast. Thank you.
Another really big thank you to Annie for her time. I absolutely loved getting to talk with her about her Annie canon as we referenced it. It was just really such a delight to get the chance to kind of get a peek behind the curtain on her creative process and how she thinks about things, especially whenever she has a collection. You Have to Let Them Bleed that is so creatively minded with color scheme and themes, and just the way that it's constructed is just really, really brilliant. And then on the flip side, her outsider sequence that is with Shortwave is so like I want to say it's visceral, but it's all psychological. There's really no words for the things that those those stories do to you whenever you're reading them. So to get the chance to talk to her about all of that was just, absolutely sublime. I am back home now from a series of travels, and I will be traveling again at the end of the month. But I will get back to releasing some bonus episodes during the week. So you all can look for that at the end of this week. It's been such a delight I just want to say to get to travel for StokerCon, and then I was fortunate enough to be CJ Leeds' conversation partner in Springfield, Missouri. Everybody that I got to meet for that book event was so kind, and it was actually my first time doing a speaking event in person, like a one-on-one conversation partner kind of piece. My first speaking event at all was at StokerCon 2 weeks ago, whenever I was on a Buzzing About Books panel. So yeah, it's been a big summer for stepping out of my comfort zone, but I've really, really enjoyed getting to do both of those things. I love connecting with people and meeting readers, so that was another really, really cool facet of getting to do that event with CJ. And also, it just means a lot that I was able to celebrate the release of Headlights, which is a book that means a hell of a lot to me, as I'm sure you all know from my previous episode with her. It's just a really special book. So to be able to be there in person to help celebrate it and to be her conversation partner meant a whole hell of a lot. But I am back home. I'm taking lots of naps because I am learning that my travel stamina is not what it used to be. And I'll be working on getting episodes out to you guys a little bit more frequently than it has been the last few weeks. Darker Times is up and rolling. I've got 2 pieces out that you can read. One is kind of like my introductory piece to Darker Times, is about like why I want to write about horror. And then the next was a reflection on StokerCon 2026. So if you want to go check those out, please feel free to go over to darkertimes.com. Those should still be available to you to read for free. We will be, kind of growing the site and doing more with it. So if you're not following us on socials, please do so. We'll be adding announcements and developments and all that kind of stuff there. Yeah, incredibly busy times, but all good stuff that's happening. So thank you all so much for listening. You all are the absolute best. If you want access to these kind of episodes and some more, I'm planning a Zoom sometime soon for my Patreon folks. Please feel free to come join us over on the Patreon, Rose from the Dead. That link is in my Instagram bio and kind of everywhere. So if you want to come join in on the fun on Patreon, please do so. It's a great time, and I've really appreciated the community that I've kind of started to build. But really, it's everybody who's already in it who's doing the cool work of being super cool and welcoming. So yeah, thanks to all of you guys already in the Patreon, and until I get to chat with you all next time, hopefully at the end of this week, whenever I cut another bonus episode loose. Thank you all so very much, and until next time.